Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad you joined us. We're going to give a few seconds because we're starting at 3 o'clock, which is different than what we have been in the past. As we wait for a couple more people to log on, let us know where you are, where are you coming to us from in the chat box. We want to see names pop up. Let us know if you're an elementary school teacher, a middle school teacher, high school teacher, principal, administrator, anything like that. So we kind of can gauge our audience a little bit. With that being said, we have an awesome presentation ready for you today. These three young ladies from Ferndale Middle School in Guilford County Schools are going to present to us. And let me just introduce them to you real quick first. And I don't know how they're presenting on your screen. So if I say your name, just raise your hand and give them a wave. All right, so I'm going to start with Ms. Monique McGilberry. McGilberry, this is her first year teaching with American Reading Company. She has been a teacher in the past, but this is her first year teaching using our resources. She was a previous high school teacher, and she was also a teacher assistant during that time and a coach for folks looking for jobs. But this is her first year. Next, we have Ms. Asia O'Neill. She also a former teacher, left the classroom for a little bit, went and taught in the corporate world for a little bit, and then came back. And this is her first year using American Reading Company as well. Both of them are 7th grade teachers. And then finally, we have their coach here with us as well, their in-school coach, Miss Tracy Simpson Gardner. She has been teaching for 1,722 years. So we bring a lot of expertise to the building with all of the things that Tracy has to offer. In fact, Tracy is going to start us off this afternoon with our presentation. I'm just going to hand it over right to y'all ladies.
Thank you, Sherry.
Just a little bit of sharing of the screen.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Sherry told you, my name is Tracy Simpson Gardner, and I am an MCL multi-classroom leader for Guilford County Schools. And I had the privilege of coaching Ms. McGilberry and Ms. O'Neill this year as part of a 7th grade team. And we were invited by Sherry and the American Reading Company to share how we transitioned from being in the classroom to now distance learning. So we titled our presentation A Bridge Over Troubled Water because right now we're actually in a civil rights era unit. And we have been in that unit since our transition. Our troubled waters, we were alluding to the transition, and it kind of centered around the coronavirus and not necessarily the events that are happening now. So this presentation is not in any way intended to respond to the civil unrest that is happening in our country now. We were really alluding to just the transition in general. But in presenting, we wanted to stay true to who we were and what we do every day. And part of that is sticking to our framework, which meant that we wanted to weave images and expressions from our core text into our presentation. So building the bridge and our transition from the classroom to distance learning, we will be presenting to you in 3 parts today. I will be presenting to you the dream, and that's basically our plan, what we needed to do and think about to make that transition. Mrs. O'Neill will be presenting activating the dream and how we executed the plan, and then Ms. McGilberry will close us out with our mountaintop moments and talk about just how we celebrated our successes. So it started with the dream. And again, that just references our plan. So the first goal that we had, or the first thing that we really wanted to do was make sure that we stuck to the framework. And I've heard almost every presenter since since we've been doing the Facebook live chats have pretty much mentioned sticking to the framework. And we wanted to make sure that the class structure that we had when we were face to face was maintained as we transitioned to distance learning. So when we were in class, students came in, we had a mini lesson that consisted of a do now, which meant that they came in and they had something to do immediately once they came into the classroom. That was followed up by a hook, a strategy that we use to engage our students. Then we had our read aloud from our grade level core text. And then we transitioned to our instruction, which went from a direct model to independent practice. From our mini lesson, we transitioned to a reader's workshop where students were able to read for 30 minutes. When they read, they were able to apply the skill that we taught that day, as well as meet with their teachers either individually or in small groups for conferences. They worked on their power goals and just did some corrective reading if it was needed, or corrective instruction, I meant. And then the last thing was on Fridays, we always gave a quick mini assessment. And the mini assessment may have been a question, 2 questions, maybe 3 questions, where we wanted to assess which students got it versus those who didn't. And again, this is what we did in the classroom. So when we transitioned to distance learning, we wanted our students to still have the same framework or the same structure so that they would be familiar with. So it wasn't really new to them. We wanted them to have some familiarity during the transition. Our big idea number 2 was we wanted to make sure that we were building knowledge and focusing on skills at the same time. We've had a lot of information on building knowledge this year. For those of you who were present a few weeks back when Natalie Wexler presented, she gave us some very good information on the importance of building knowledge and how it helps students to become better readers and to build their vocabulary. So in our transition, we wanted to make sure that we stuck with that civil rights topic and that we were continually building that background knowledge for our students, as well as making sure that we were teaching standards. And the standard focus was an argument standard. So students were introduced to either argument or argument writing, which meshed really well with the Civil Rights Era unit. And finally, the big idea for the transition was to make sure as the coach, I continued to build capacity. And that's teacher capacity and team capacity. What could have been a time for chaos ended up being a very great opportunity to build community. So we had a great community of collaboration and support within our 7th grade. We had PLCs every week. The team that we worked with included Ms. McGillberry along with Ms. O'Neill. We also had Ms. Herberg, Ms. Wagstaff, and Mr. Gary, who was our EC support. Every PLC started with a check-in. We just kind of checked in with each other to see how everyone was doing. Once we assessed each other's strengths, then we divvied up tasks. Ms. McGillberry was responsible for our pacing. She made sure that we were always on track with ARC pacing as well as our district pacing. Ms. Herbert was responsible for research and tech tools to make sure that we were finding creative ways to engage our students in their learning. The lesson plan, since it has so many different components to the lesson plan, we divvied that up. Everyone took a part. And when we met for PLCs, they talked about, or they presented the parts that they were contributing. Miss O'Neill was our virtual instructor though. So she made sure that she recorded all of our direct instruction and our explicit modeling. And although she was recording it, it was for all teachers. So we made sure that all students got the same instruction. And then Ms. Wagstaff and Mr. Gary closed us out by making sure that we were accommodating our EC students with scaffolds that they needed to be successful. We ended our PLCs with a stress test called Where's Your Water, which was a fun, quick way for me to assess kind of where everybody was. And then I provided support for them throughout the week to make sure that they were successful in completing their task for the week.
Now, this is the part that we always like to call activating the dream, because this is where that dream and that vision that Ms. Simpson Gardner creates and she puts together according to our strengths, that's where we take that and we execute that plan. And we've come this far by faith is one of the mantras, because when transitioning from that face-to-face classroom to the distance learning environment, it really was an act of faith taking that first step. We had to have faith in each other as far as the strengths that we all brought to the table, and having faith, true faith in Simpson Gardner's vision of how this would go and how this can be smooth, and making sure that students still were able to grow and have that skill development. The first piece of activating that dream and executing that plan was making sure that our distance learning environment mirrored what the face-to-face environment was, and mirroring how the ARC core and framework looked with how it would look in our distance learning. And the same way that our face-to-face classrooms were a place where students wanted to be there. It was warm, it was welcoming, it was inviting, and there was a place for everything and everything in its place. And the same way that the ARC framework was student friendly and it was always easily accessible down to the libraries, that's what we wanted to do for the online environment. So with the online environment, sticking with the framework, we made this a place that students would want to be. And not only making it a place where they want to be, a place where everything, just like the face-to-face classroom and the face-to-face ARC framework, everything served a dual purpose. For instance, with the poster, that's where they would go to get any contact info for their teacher or the other teachers on the team. They could click on the clock to fill in times for their ARC one-on-one conferences. They can go to the mini library, just like they would in the classroom, to get the materials that they needed for the week. The dogs are known to be something that you play with, something that's warm, something that brings you company. So they can click on that in order to join group conferencing. Even down to the Bitmoji of the teacher on the couch. Just like in the classroom, you are the one who's there to deliver that information and to make sure that they know what they need, whether it's dealing with things classroom-wise or the ARC framework. And so in the online environment, they can click on the teacher and get that same type of access. They could click on the window to take them to other ARC aligned materials. They can click on the door to go to the direct inbox to speak with the instructor, the same way that they will be able to come directly to you, walk through your classroom door, and have access to you as their instructor. They could click on, in this library, as you can see, we have the core text. They can click on that and actually get the ARC core text. They can click here and actually access the ARC bookshelf. The same way we're in a classroom, they would be able to go to the library and access the ARC text. They can click on the notebook and be able to go to the research quest because we were in an argument writing research unit. The same way that in the face-to-face classroom, they would be able to access the ARC core materials. And so everything serves a dual purpose. And it may have seemed overwhelming to them, but just like in the face-to-face classroom, after a while, they learn that there's a place that they go for everything, which is what makes it student friendly. They know that there's a way to access all of their ARC resources and materials. So that's the same way we wanted to make it in our distance learning environment. And then once they've accessed these things to get them ready for the lesson, the same way they would in our 21st century classroom, they could click on this TV in their online environment and take them to their learning module for the week. And so once they clicked on this module, this is what they would go into. Once again, sticking to that framework and accessing the ARC support. When they came into the classroom, there was a do now. They click in here, there's a do now. In the classroom, it followed with the hook, and they can do the same thing here. In the classroom, there was a mini lesson that would consist of the read aloud of the ARC text and the presentation of any supplementary material for their development and growth. It's here as well. They have a time for independent practice and readers workshop and conferencing. It happens here. They have a space where they would respond to what they've dealt with in the conference or the reading. They would also do that here. So no matter what, we try to bridge it to make sure that the framework is what we always stuck with to ensure that they had growth and development. And that ARC core was key. It's what made that bridge for us. Now, when we're talking about the ARC resources and the materials of the framework, this is exactly what we meant. It's not something where there was just a list of, well, you can go to this site and you can go to that site. We did not have to hunt for rich text because it was right there in the framework. When it came time to actually have the students practice or give direct modeling, we were able to pull resources from the ARC curriculum, whether it was straight plug and play, or whether we pulled a resource and were able to modify it or even completely reimagine it to fit our student needs so that they can grow. And that's the great thing about ARC and the framework and the resources that they have, because you were taught from day one that you could tweak it for what your students need for their growth and development.
Okay, so our mountaintop moment, that would be the culmination of everything that we've done collaboratively in preparation to deliver and ensure student engagement, to deliver the instruction and make sure that students are engaged. With our collaboration in our PLCs, with our team that Ms. Simpson Gardner mentioned earlier, which consists of Holly Herbert, Joseph Gary, Sonia Wagstaff, we all came together, and through innovation and best practices, we came up with solutions as a unit to figure out what was the best way to utilize Canvas for optimum student engagement. And we also found that Canvas, it'll allow us or allowed us to enhance the lessons, to keep the students engaged. And we had really good success with it, in particular, daily announcements. This is a time when you can kind of use your announcements as a barometer to see how the students are doing. It's like a daily check-in to just kind of gauge what is their level of comfort with the work that they've been assigned to do for that day. It's also a great reminder that, okay, today we are to do this particular lesson, and they know already, as Ms. O'Neill was saying, where they can locate the information. But that gives us a chance to kind of give them the opportunity to get in touch with us if need be. And also word of encouragement, just, cheering them on, letting them know you can do this. A lot of the students experience slight trepidation. Even though many of our students are very tech savvy, the transition from going from face to face to direct to online instruction, distance learning, it was a bit of a reach for many students. But we found as the lessons were being presented to them and the resources were so readily available, we found them opening up. Even some of the students that weren't maybe engaged before, we started to see them coming in, using the discussion boards to discuss lessons. Also, we use Canvas for direct messages. This is a way that you can contact your student directly and say, okay, hey, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns? Or maybe haven't heard from you today. Direct messages allow you to kind of still maintain that same one-on-one, even though you're not physically there. As we would in the classroom, we checked in there and we continue to check in using direct messages with Canvas. And also daily work submissions. This is where the students are going directly into Canvas and they are submitting their work. So they really don't have to worry about, oh, I don't have a paper, I don't have this. They can do it right there on Canvas. And then we're able to weekly go back in and assess the work that's being done. This is showing us who's doing the work, who needs help, and we know who to reach by assessing the assignments as they're coming in through Canvas for us as well. We also use Canvas for conferencing, and it has been a phenomenal tool. We're able to, once again, talk with the students one-on-one and address any needs that they have as far as the work is concerned. And also, we've been using it just as we did in the classroom. We've been using Canvas conferencing to conference with students, to check in with them on their power goals. What are you reading? What do you like about what you're reading? Tell me about that. And just keeping students engaged and reminding them to read 30 minutes a day, reminding them to utilize the resources that are readily available to them. So we've had great success beyond what we imagined because we worked together and made sure that the students were able to access the information on Canvas. Then we go back and assess. As I was saying earlier, we can go back and assess using Canvas what is being done, daily checks for understanding, and then giving explicit feedback. That goes back to direct messaging. So as you're checking your students' assignments and you can see what they're doing, what they're submitting to you, you're then able right away to go back and say, okay, I've read this. Do you need help with that? Giving them feedback, even whether that's they did it right or maybe they had a little challenge. Giving them feedback lets them know that they're not on an island, that this is still a community. And the feedback that's coming is giving them encouragement to press forward, continue on. Also, the data analysis on Canvas is actually really good. It will allow you to see down to students individually, who scored on this particular question, whether that question was right or wrong. How many students got this question wrong? It gives you a really good form of analytics using the tools that Canvas offers. And again, conferencing has just been amazing what we're able to do with that. So we have really, really been able to utilize Canvas in a great way to make sure that our students continue to stay engaged and that they can grab a hold of the work and not feel like, this is just hanging out somewhere. We've essentially, all of us together, built a community. I even had a student that submitted work on Canvas. I still don't know how he did it, but he's submitted work on Canvas through Snapchat and sent that to me on a Saturday night. So, you have those mountaintop moments, and despite everything, you celebrate those. And After a while, we had more mountaintops than we had challenges.
I just have to jump in right here. I don't think you three realize what a phenomenal classroom setting you have prepared for students. I feel welcomed in the classroom without even being in it. One question that was brought up in the chat box is, how do you define what engagement looks like right now? I know it looks different than what it would when you were in the classroom, but how now have you been able to accomplish that?
Who wants to take?
Well, in order to look at student engagement in the online environment, we tended to not try to view engagement differently simply because it was online. In the classroom, engagement was more than did you raise your hand. Mm-hmm. We tried to look at engagement in the online environment in the form of those group conferences. Were the students responding to each other on the discussion boards? Are they joining in the team-wide conferencing? How forthwith are they in your one-on-one conference? Mm-hmm. And then underneath that, even though academics is important, with all of that, how is this translating over to the work submission? And not just, is the work being submitted? What's that quality of work? And if that quality of work was matching the quantity and the quality of the conversations on the discussion boards and the conferences, it's a pretty good gauge of the level of engagement. And you can monitor and adjust from there.
Fabulous, ladies. Just simply fabulous. Your presentation has been easy to follow. I can visualize what this looks like as you are working with your students. It makes me wonder what the possibilities for you all will be as we venture into going back to school. We know it's not going to look like it used to look. And I think you already have a framework. Sticking with the framework, you have a framework for what that could possibly look like across America, to be quite honestly. If you are,
y'all, ARC, you all did an amazing job making sure that we had the resources needed to transition to distance learning, from the Quest to the ARC bookshelf to just all of the tools that we needed, because initially when we were considering the dream, we were going to go one way. But when we saw all of the resources that you all had made available to us, we said, hey, this is going to be really easy. This is not going to be hard at all, because everything was right there. So
it was a hallelujah moment.
Kudos to you all, because it did save us. The route that we were going to go took us it was going to be way much more work for us. So you all really did help us out by making those resources available.
Well, y'all made the dream come to life, and we certainly appreciate you sharing with us how you've made this happen. I'm proud and happy to be able to watch you as you continue on in this journey and provide excellent education to the students of Ferndale Middle School. Thanks again for sharing with us. Thanks again for being vulnerable enough to share with us, because we all are trying this out for the first time. It's, as the famous quote goes, it is unprecedented times. So we are all trying new things and seeing what's works. As far as next week, guys, I want to just keep you posted. Come back and join us again next week, Wednesday, 3 o'clock. Next week, we'll have 2 American Reading Company representatives speaking to you on virtual technology and how to conference with students virtually. That's going to be Kristen and Cheryl next week, same time, 3 o'clock. We hope you'll join us. Additionally, if there are things that you want to hear us talk about, let us know in the comments. We want to hear from you, and we want to present to you what you want to hear, and not always what we think you want to hear, right? So give us a little help, give us a little heads up in the comment section, and please join us again next Wednesday, 3 p.m. Thank you so much, Lee.
Shout out.
Yes, shout out.
Well, you could not tell me that my teachers are first year to ARC. They beasted like they 15, veterans, 15-year plus. I want to shout out our amazing, amazing ARC coach, Shadonna Gunn. I know that she is in the audience. So yay for Shadonna, yay. And the other people that's, or teachers that's part of our amazing All-Stars team. I don't know if they're in the chat or not, or participating or not, but Miss Davenport and Miss Pan are also part of our team, along with, we've already said, Miss Herbert, Miss Wagstaff, and Mr. Gary. I want to shout all of them out. So thank you for this opportunity, Sherry.
Thank you. And if you too want to have a seat at a student seat in Ferndale Middle School, let us know. We can make that happen for you. It's called Seeing is Believing.
Seeing is believing.
All right. Bye-bye for now. See you next Wednesday, 3 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.